coach at Mike's actually at Armstrong, and then from there became the president of Armstrong, and from there became the president of District 3, became the director. During that time I became the director of the Minnesota Hockey High Performance 15 program, which I did until up to last year, so 18 years of doing that. And at that time I became the VP of Hockey Operations for Minnesota Hockey. And I'm also the GM for the Tier 1 program, which we started and we'll go through 3 years ago. There was a coaching clinic, a national coaching clinic that was run a couple years ago, and they were just talking about different things going around in the United States, and no one asked Ren Pecknold, but he just came up with this statement and stated it to the whole coaching section: the best state for producing hockey players is Minnesota. Nothing even comes close to touching the Minnesota in youth and high school hockey. So we really do, and I know you've heard other people talk about what we have here. It is something to be treasured. We're not like everybody else, and everything that we've done backs up what we're doing as far as and you'll see as I go through the type of players that we're producing, men and women. Nothing really compares to us. At this point in time, we have 265 plus ranks. Quite a few were added on when the Mighty Ducks program came into place, and then many of you probably have been able to experience that. We have the most Division I players in the country, 193, most women, 157, most junior hockey players in the country, and the most combined D1 and D3 college players in the country. And the most NHL players, which I know we just talked about that earlier, but there's 57 players playing in the NHL and having an impact, even as far as into the Stanley Cups, to get to watch some of our players play there. So we have a lot of good things going on here. We lead the nation in 15, 16, and 17 players selected for teams out of our summer camps the past 10 years, and USA Hockey rates players A, B, and C in the camps, and we consistently lead in every area, but definitely always lead in the A and B ratings. We have 47,000 players that are playing hockey in Minnesota. So if you looked at the size of countries, we would be the 4th largest country for hockey players, behind Canada, Russia, and Sweden. So, and that's just in our backyard. So it's quite an accomplishment. We have over 8,000 coaches that are coaching here. Probably the one area that we have led the country in Olympic and U20 players and 5,800 high school players, boys and girls. Probably the one place that we don't lead around USA Hockey is in the 19U area. But if you look at our youth programs from U6, U8, U12, U14, 15, we call it here, we definitely are far and away above, bigger than anyone as far as girls hockey at this point in time. So I always look at that, and I kind of run through this with all our players that are summer camps. I look at that and everybody says, well, yeah, you stick your chest up, that's pretty good. I kind of take it another way. We're on top, and to stay on top means we cannot be complacent. We've got to think and look at new things that we can do. So innovation planning is a big part of what we do in our high performance programs. As the VP of Hockey Ops, High Performance sits under me with Mike McMillan, who is the head of our high performance programs. So when we meet, we're constantly talking with Mike about different things we can do. He's a great innovator. He's what I would call an idea guy. So he does that along with being the coach in chief for all of USA Hockey. So he's kind of got the pulse on what's going on around the country, and most people want to know what we're doing. And that's not to stick our chest out. We just have a system that works, and so we constantly get asked that question. Anybody in here had anybody go through the HP process? The boys, girls?
Oh boy.
What? You had a good time?
Loved it.
Yeah. We don't get too many people. Did you end up at the camp?
No, he was injured that week.
Oh,
the weekend before.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about Minnesota is, and we do get injuries. I don't know if you remember Kent Patterson, who ended up playing for the Gophers. Well, when he was 15, he blew his knee out, and that was it. They said Kent, and then no Kent really well because he played at Armstrong where I grew up. And I said, don't worry, because we have 15, 16, and 17, and he came back and did those teams. So hopefully your son was able to come back and make some impacts. We have about a 50% turnover from our 15 national players to our 16, and from 16 to 17. So players mentally and physically, we don't know when they're going to develop and mature, but we want to make sure that we have the programs there to develop them so that they can. Even to the point of we added 18s because we found out, we had over 1,000 players aging out of our high performance programs at 17. Some pretty good players yet, and probably going to go on and play college hockey. So we decided we needed to develop that, found those 1,000 players, created a scaled down version of 16 and 17s at the high school level. So it has done very well. They play with our grade 8 players, our seniors, and if you're not familiar with that, grade 8 is a chance for us to showcase the seniors that haven't gotten scholarship offers, and it's another chance for scouts to come out and look at it. So our 18s play there too, and then they come into our spring festival where the 15s are, and the national invitational tournament comes in too. Just as a little history, we used to take all of our players at that level to the Chicago Showcase, and we started to notice that the scouts just weren't there anymore. So I said, well, why don't we just bring them here? Because I'm pretty sure we'll get people to come here. And so we started doing that about 6 years ago, and it's turned out to be a jewel for us. And we get a lot of coaches that want to come because they're here to watch the 15s, 16s, and 17s. 18s are there in the NIT, so it's kind of all in one inclusive spot. For the boys, it's run in Plymouth, and the girls are in Plymouth in the first part of the festival. And then when they go to the final 54, this year they moved to Fogarty Arena, which I think and I hope will be our home there for them for a long time. So the Minnesota model, and so we support community-based hockey, and that's different from around the country, and we don't apologize for that. It just works for us. We looked, and we have looked maybe more than once, should we change our age to match USA Hockey? And it always gets back to high school hockey and the way our players just develop up and move into the high school ranks. It's just a natural progression for us. It makes sure that our Bantam and our 14 players can play a couple of years in the youth. So we decided not to do that, so we do have a different age than the rest of the country. When it comes to our season play, most of the neighboring districts know that. They're aware of it. They don't have a problem with it. And so they just know ahead of time if a Minnesota team's coming in. We're 6 months older. And it's not a problem around the country. So after we get through with our season, we have our spring program. So the spring program is the HP development opportunities, and then our HP 1 and 2 comes in the fall. 14s is an addition to that, and this is what it looks like. So we started 14s 3 or 4 years ago because USA Hockey said 14 was too young to maybe be identifying players for national tournaments, calling them elite, whatever it is you want to do. And they decided we should have 14s regionally around the country and let that district, in this case Minnesota district, run it the way they want to run it. We'll still give the grants to them, and they do grant us money for these high performance programs. So we started the 14s, and and just ran them in the spring, and then we just ended it at spring. Well, it was a natural progression for us to bring them into the summer camps too. So we did that 3 years ago. They go 1 day less, and it's been a huge success since we did it. We also bring, instead of 102 players, we bring 120 players because we wanted to develop a bigger base. And it's worked out really well. So in the spring, what they do is the 4 teams have 3 games that they play at the festival. They have 15 training hours, so we wanted to keep all of our development programs skill-based. So most of that is skill-based, leading up into the summer festival development camp. 15s play 5 games. They play 2 seeding games before, and this is all run by districts. They play 2 seeding games, and we have 4 divisions, and then those teams are seeded into the spring festival, and then they play another 3 games there, just like the 14s do. 14s were up in Duluth this year, and the 15s are in Plymouth, along with all of our other boys teams. The 16s, and I always tell people there's a difference between 15 and 16s one way. When you're 15, you're nominated through your districts. When you become a 16-year-old, now it's high school sections. So remember, when you get up to that point, you want to make sure that the high school coach is nominating you through the process that we had, which moves very, very smoothly. They have 6 games. They play the pre-festival 3 games, and then they pick what we call the final 54, and they bring 3 teams in, and now they're evaluating down to, and we're always evaluating down to the select camps that USA Hockey runs, and we get a certain allotment of players. And so at that point in time, in the final 54, the 16s play, and then they actually play the 17s too in 1 game. And so out of that, number of players are picked, and we get that allotment every year. I can tell you what it is. We don't do it at 14. At 15, I can tell you we generally get about 22 selections, and we generally send about 26 kids because we send a lot of alternates, or at-large players as they call it. And 17s, same thing, go through the same process, and now as I mentioned, we added the 8 teams. So they had an 8-game schedule, 4 at the festival, and then they play 4 at the NIT, which is the National Invitational Tournament. And into the National Invitational Tournament comes usually Michigan, Central, Wisconsin, and Mass, depending on the number of the players they have. So that's usually what the NIT is made up of. And it's just a great place for our seniors. We you know, some people will say, well, they're high school, what do you worry about that? Well, they were our players at one time. We want to make sure they get every opportunity they can. So these programs with HB they're considered youth programs, but we have high school players playing in the programs. So if you have a high school player, and then all of a sudden you found out you had to register with USA Hockey to play in the festivals if you went in there, and that's the reason why. And everything is organized by birth year, which is different from what we do with our regular ages, but for USA Hockey, and because they're going on to national camps, we go by birth year. So you hear the 04, 03, 06, all the way down the line. Side note, my very first time that I ran with the 15s, and I hate to do this because it kind of ages me out, but Zach Crazy was in the group. And I'll never forget his dad coming up to me one day, and he goes, you know, John, that goalie we have, the puck didn't hit him very much. I think they lost like 8-2 or something. So he was pretty funny about it all. Opportunities in the spring, we also have training centers, tryout and practices for high performance. Spring sports, they are okay. We encourage that, and this also happens for us in the summer. I get people saying, hey, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth because you're playing all year round. Well, if anybody is involved in another sport and they're playing in any kind of a game or a tournament, state tournament or something like that, that's where they go first. That's their spring sport. We try to work around that, and it gets down to where the player has to make a decision. But we try not to tell them, hey, you can only do this. We're probably starting to get into the specialization. If you were in here with Dr. Moore talking about it, we're getting close to that part, but we still would like to see multi-sport athletes. Other summer camp opportunities, high school and youth SDP games and training. The SDP program, which stands for Satellite Training Program, we started many years ago by, gosh, I don't know if it was Ted Brill or Hendrickson, I'm not really sure, but the idea was we could train during the summer and have everything based on skills, and then we could have a festival for them at the end of the year. And we did that for many years with high school and bantam age players. We eventually moved away from the festival, although I don't, does the high school still have something in Burnsville?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, there's just some high
Okay.
school up, but it's not formalized.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but there's a weekend.
So the whole idea was, after all this training, we wanted to just give them something at the end, you know, to play some games. And we've talked about doing that with some of the other programs I'm going to talk to you about with Tier 1. We did take model camp under ourselves now, so we are part of model camp through Minnesota Hockey, and which is a program run by the University of Minnesota. The Dave Peterson goalie camp is run up in St. Cloud, where we run all our camps. Steve Carroll is the head coach for that. And we introduced last year for the first time, we call it the Dave Peterson Shooting and Scoring Camp. So what we did is we signed up players that were at the summer festivals and asked them if they'd like to come and shoot on the goalies. I think it was, we take total of 48 players that sold out in 8 hours. And what happened was, when we used to do the goalie camps and they were up there, things would kind of stop if you wanted to talk to the goalie and tell them, here's what I see is happening. Now, and I was up there last year for the first time, now the ice is just packed. They've got 8 goals out there. Everybody's shooting, and if a player needs to be talked to, that coach has the time to sit and talk to them while the players are shooting on the goalies. So there's never really a hiccup. Ice utilization, everything up tempo, and plus it gives the players a chance to work with some different scoring techniques too. So big success for us for last year. All of our camps and programs are self-funding. In other words, those are self-funded through the what we charge, so there's no deficit on it. And then we pick up a lot of other things involved in the camps, but for $650 to go spend a week up in St. Cloud, you really can't find that anywhere else. And quite honestly, the coaches that come up could probably make more money going on their own, but they too like to come up to the camps too. It's a chance for them to visit with their peers and talk about the things they're doing. And so we're constantly looking at different practice plans and things like that with college coaches and high school coaches alike. So it's a great interaction for our coaching too. And now the HP 14s are up there in one day less camp. So we check the boys and girls for the 15s in on Saturday, and then we check the boys and girls for the 14s in on Sunday. Couldn't check them all at once, it'd be total chaos. It's total chaos anyway. About 4 years ago, we started to get a lot of pressure from outside organizations that wanted to be representing Minnesota as a Tier 1 team. So we decided that we needed to look in to see if we wanted to be part of Tier 1. We had been a part of it and then kind of stepped away. We really only sent one team, a Bantam team, to go to the national tournament, get slaughtered against teams that have been playing all year round and probably had budgets of $20,000, and our kids were just playing there. I think the last one came from Izetta, and Hal Turris was coaching, and they had a great camp. I don't think they ever won anything, but so we kind of stepped back from it. We're starting to get the pressure of these outside organizations, such as the Blades and the Magicians and Minnesota Maine, things like that. So we decided, well, we need to put a committee together. So I put a committee together with all of our high school coaches, a few other people, and then we hired an outside service actually to help us work through the process. If you've ever sat on a board, Minnesota Hockey's board is no different. There gets times when it's hard to move on and gets dysfunctional, and you're trying to get the answer to everything, and outside service helped us kind of keep moving forward on this to get us to the point where we needed to be. And I think our biggest choice was, do we want to be a Tier 1 state? Is it important for us to do that? So we went through and got through the whole process and came to the decision that, yeah, we could do that, but we wanted to do it our way. We didn't want to do it the way the other around the country is doing it. It's a little disjointed right now, because around the country you have a lot of private rink owners, and so if they own a rink, these are my Tier 1 teams that come and play for me. Total opposite of what we do. And we all saw what happened to Mass when they started going private rinks, and we didn't want to go that way. So we said, we'll do it, but we wanted to put in the skill development and build that into it, and then we want to be pre and post. So in other words, we want to be able to play before our season starts and get our teams through, and there's a certain number of games that you have to play to qualify for a national tournament. So we got them to reduce that down for us just because of our model, and they understood it and did that from 20 to 15. We did that for 2 years. Now we're up to 17 games, and I'm sure they want to get us to 20, but it's hard with our model in the off season and other sports to try and get that all done at once, and we don't want to take that other part, those other sports away. So we get our rosters a little bit bigger, and it helps us do that. So we decided and came through that we would set it up like this. Our 18Us and 16Us would go by sections, our high school sections, which were already in place. And I was told, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you're following something you've done in the past. And our 14s and 15s all went as districts. So again, same model as the spring. So our Tier 1 will start trying out. They're signing up right now. And they will start their tryouts after the summer camps are over. And they will be done by October, first weekend in October. So we compact it in, players sign up for it, they try out again. The same players that tried out for the spring program are trying out again. And the reason we do that, and if you've ever seen a player in April and then you look at him in July, he or she can be a totally different person. Way more growth, skill-wise, mentally. So we felt it was important not to be an organization to just put names up on a website and say you're on the team. We felt it was important for them to go through the trials. One of the things we did do is we said any one of our national players that made a national team would be added to that district as an automatic. They would still have to go through trials, but they would have a spot on the registration. So that worked out well too. Any questions so far?
So the Tier 1 kids trying out are coming from the HD program, is that correct?
Yeah, and some of them don't even have, maybe not even gone through the spring, or they've been cut from the spring. So we wanted to make sure that they still felt like they could still try out even though they didn't make it through the first pick. So that's why the tryouts were put in there.
For those of you that are kind of new to it, from our program, we're finding it to be a really good option versus extending yourself into a AAA market option, which can be almost triple the cost. So especially for two-sport kids, the fall sport kids who might be in soccer, or even another kid that might be playing fall baseball or even lacrosse and that stuff, it's about a third of the cost minus the travel. So you're taking away some of the time and the cost, and these kids are just as prepared when they get into your high school window, that preparatory window, when you combine it with like a captain's practice or something of that nature. It's really, it keeps, John, what you say, it keeps getting better and keep gaining steam.
There's no doubt.
And it's the only confusing part about it is people think they sign up in the spring and they're already signed up for the fall, and they're not. They're independent of each other,
Yeah.
so you gotta sign up twice.
The first year was a bugger.
Yeah, but just because it turned the same.
Yep.
So just think HP in the spring is more of a USA hockey model to get the nationals, and there's a sequence of tryouts. And the fall is more preparatory for the winter season.
Upcoming season, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there different age, like, because the spring HPs is going on right now, so looking at the fall, looked to be like a 14s in the fall. Is there one in the spring also?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw like for the fall, coming up in the fall, it was birth year 506. And I don't think the 06s were an option for this last
The 13-year-olds, right?
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for that, but they will be for Tier 1, because that's
Okay.
14 and under. So
Gotcha. All right.
the 06 could actually try out. In fact, we've had that happen in the beginning, and quite honestly, and we've done something to correct that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, but not that many of those players, at that time, they were the 05s, were making those teams, but it was a great experience for them to do that tryout for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
That's a great question. So one of the things that we did, and we figured that we had evolved into what we think is important, and that is if we have 80 players trying out, or 40 players trying out, and we're only taking 20 or 17, what are we doing with those other players? Well, we were just releasing them. And the phone calls I was getting is, well, what can my son, what can my daughter do? And I said, well, you know, now this year we're doing a Prospects League, or what people will call Tier 2. So if that happens now, that first 20 or 17 makes that team, and the next one makes the next team. They don't even have to try out again. So, and that could be where those 06s are sitting. Maybe a couple will move up. But then the next year, they're up there. They've already done a tryout, so they're ready to go. Very similar to what we do in the regular season. If you think in the regular season, if you were picking your 18, and you picked your 15 or 17, and then you said, well, sorry. And you didn't have a team for them. Well, we wanted to have a team for them. We didn't want to cut players. We wanted to keep people involved, and we wanted to build our base. So that's new this year. Like any of our programs, we'll have hiccups, and we'll walk before we run. But we can only do it if we find out what happens. So we're in the middle of those sign-ups right now.
And we want our Bantam A coaches or Bantam AA coaches are nominating those players, is that right?
For Tier 1?
For Tier 1 or for HP?
HP, yes. Tier 1, it's just a sign-up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But your Bantam coaches might maybe want to influence them. Yeah, you should sign up for this. Just like Sean said, you can sign up for this, or you can go play for XYZ AAA and pay $1,000 and get to travel to Canada and Lake Placid, or you can work on development the whole time leading up into the season. And we would get the calls from youth people like yourself, but also high school people that want to know what can we do, because he's going to be high school next year. And we're trying to fill that void. And we're trying to make the Tier 2 a little less expensive, more skill development, more on the lines of, we talked about having a festival at the end, so we've got a couple of weekends where they can play some games. But our focus is really keeping them in our camp and developing, also giving an opportunity for more coaches to coach those teams, also as much as the players to play on those teams. So building our coach base is important too, and bringing them into the HP umbrella, which we've done in the past. In the summer camp, we used to have 3 coaches. We went to 4 coaches. Everybody screamed, what are we going to do? How are we going to get all those coaches on the ice at once? That lasted about a year, and then now what's happening is we're finding those people that we brought in are now our assistant coaches. They're going to be our next head coaches. So we're training the
Great
trainers.
professional development for your band youth coaches.
Without a doubt.
U14 girls, U12 girls.
Yep.
It's awesome to develop professional development for them.
Unfortunately, we all have a problem with change, and some take it better than others. But if you, just kind of like we talked about, if you, in Finland, if you're strong enough and stay with it, it'll take hold, and it's taken hold for us for sure. So, and the other thing is we brought back into our HP a lot of former players, Division I, Division III players now that are coaching. And that only helps us, because in anything you're at, you need to have some sort of a contingency. I'm not going to be here 5 years from now, standing up here. I'm going to be really old by that time. I might even not be playing hockey. I'll probably be playing hockey. But someone's got to take my spot somewhere along the line, and Sean's not going to be the Minnetonka coach for 10 years to 20 years, so someone's got to be able, so he's got to develop under him. So same for you, even in your districts and in your coaching staff. So that's kind of got off a tangent there. So we now have Tier 1 and we called it Tier 2, we've called it a prospects league because we didn't want to put the label so much, but I'm sure everybody will just say Tier 2, just like when you're in A or B, or B1 or B2, right? So they get to play against top competition at a particular age classification and ADM and long-term athlete development goals. The intent is to give players the opportunity for more development, more competition, and the possibility to play in a national championship while maintaining successful community-based teams. So the first year that we opened up Tier 1, we let the other teams play on a one-year basis, and then we came back and said, no, our Tier 1 teams in Minnesota are going to be our district teams and teams from the Upper Midwest Elite League. So Upper Midwest Elite League is our 18 and under Tier 1, and our 16 and under is under Minnesota Hockey. That is a newly formed group now that has come under our wing too. So we work in conjunction with the Upper Midwest Elite League. So here's what happens, and this is the telling story I think that Sean was talking about. So if you're playing in the Upper Midwest League or you're playing in the Tier 1 League at 16, that's an additional 20 to 24 games. So you add the high school games in, you're almost at 50 games. That's enough games to play in a year. So one of the reasons these programs were created was to stop people leaving Minnesota to go play because they weren't getting enough games. So we've done that. The high school has stayed fast. I think we tried to get 3 more games, they shot it down. They'll reload and go back again, but this is the thing that can help, and our Tier 1 programs will help that for our youth teams too. There's an HP Tier 2 18 games. That's a 18 team, Tier 2, and so they will actually, and they went to the national tournament last year for the first time, so that's another option too. Then we have regional leagues that'll have 10 to 15 games, captain's practice, obviously training centers, and again, fall sports is okay. So in many cases, like in the Upper Midwest League, they'll carry a 25-man roster because there are players that play other sports, and there are players up north that are expected to play the other sport. That's just it. There's just not enough people. So that's been with us forever, and we've always put out a model and said, work the model the way you want it, based on where you live. I can't tell District 15 and 16 that they have to play 3 games during the week. That doesn't work. But every week, if they're getting the number of ice times, they're going to do it on a weekend. Why? Because they drive 2.5 hours. Once in a while I get in one of these meetings and someone says, geez, I have to drive a half an hour to go play in Minnetonka. It's like, be quiet. These people are driving 2.5 hours one way to play a game. So when I look at the expense reports from up north compared down here, they're submitting mileage. We're very rarely submitting mileage here because they're going from Wayzata over to New Hope. It's 4 miles. It's just not turned in. So, but it balances out over the long run. So we build that in, and that's just the way it works.
It's the new big southern out west, Laconia.
Yeah, that's right. Well, interesting enough, I was the VP of Maroon Division for 6 years, and the Metro has grown. west for sure, and picking up other places too. So it's kind of interesting how that is. But we always keep everybody in mind when we do all of our programs. We put the model out, run the model the way you want to run it. Our Tier 1 and Tier 2 fall programs do one of two things. So these are the districts that for the youth that run them. At the 14 level, we do have 11 and 12 that go together. And at 15 and 16 obviously go together too. At 15, 11, 12, 15, and 16 go together. The reason being for that, we have a lot more competition at that level with outside leagues. And so our numbers are not as big. There's some programs that just put names up on a website in January and you're on the team. We still feel we don't want to prostitute our way of doing it. We still want to do the tryout. We want to make it skill-based, based on what you can do. So there's a little change on that. Similar to what our girls are at the spring, we have 10 teams. We used to have 12 teams. We went down to 8 teams at one point in time, and then we saw that we needed to bounce back up to 10, and we've been there for a long time. But we wanted to make it, if we ever needed to go to 12 teams, we would have that opportunity to do that. Build the base, more players playing. So what happens in the Tier 1 is they play these amount of games that they have to play. This year it's 17 games. And then they have a playoff to see who goes to nationals. And Shattuck is a grandfathered association that is part of our tryout, part of our playoffs. And so the rest is coming from us. And first year, we sent a 15 only team because they didn't have one. And then the second year, we sent a 1400 girls team who won nationals. We've sent a 15 only team every year. And the girls 1400 this year did not win. I think they lost in the second game. But again, just a great opportunity, and we need to do things for them too, because there is a cost in doing that, in traveling to Plymouth, Michigan, or to Arizona. So those costs come up, and we'd like to be able to help them. We're trying to figure out a way to do it equally for everybody. And last thing we talked about is we would pay for all entry fees. But now we're getting such an appetite for so many people that want to play Tier 1 or Tier 2 national tournaments, we kind of have to put a committee together and talk about that because it gets to be a strain. So, but we're looking at that. Any questions on either the fall or the spring and summer?
So if I have players asking questions about the program, what's the best way to go about that? Should I direct them to the Minnesota Hockey website to go through the process there?
If they're 14-year-olds,
Yeah, like first and second year bands is what I do.
Yep. Second year band would be me, so they would contact me.
Yep.
They'd go on the website where the sign up is, and then they'll also see the GMs for those teams, and they'll see the program manager, they'll see me, and they'll see my assistant, Sean Stewart, from down in New Ulm. And if it's spring, they'll see Scott Dornfeld, who is my assistant and now is the director, since I stepped away to take the hockey ops position, and Sean Stewart is his assistant there. Girls, they'll see Cheryl McKelvey will be the 15s, and the 14s is Jenna Trout now. And this was her first year as the 14 GM. So, but if they just go to the website, click on high performance, they'll drop down every level. So if they know they're going to be a 15, you'll see 15 spring, you'll see Tier 1, same for 14s, same for 16s and 17s. John Peterson is the 16-17 GM. If you've gone on to sections, and on the girls, Adara is the girls. 16 and 17. Paul Moan is the grade 8, and NIT is Chris Lunke. So all they're on that site. So if they just go to website, high performance, click, find out where they fit in, they'll find places to contact. It'll talk even about registration, what the schedule will look like. Coming into to the summer camps now, those booklets will be up there for anybody who's going to that. And the Tier 1 is up there now too. Registration is ongoing right now. I think the last time I looked, we had over 100 players registered. So that has taken off like you can't believe. It's kind of like we were cutting through the brush for that. Now we're on the freeway, but now we're cutting through the brush on 14 Prospects League. So, but that's just the way it always works. We always seem to be, when you start a new program, it's always very controversial. How's this going to work? And we say there's just trust in the process. And about 2 years later, we got things going along fine. So another place for you to go to answer your question is right there to the website. And you can also, Mike McMillan couldn't be here, he's down at the college meetings down in Tampa Bay right now. And I don't know if they're doing some coaching stuff down there too. I know he received an award down there.
Yeah, he got the Snooks Award.
Yep.
Yeah, they do a lot of college guys meetings.
And I know that I talked to Winnie Broad, who's the coach of the Whitecaps, and she was down there too. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on there with the NHL and college. But this is Mike's email address. You can contact him for any questions. I work really closely with Mike on all the programs, so either one is you're going to get an answer.
Not that the website is confusing at all, it's not, but we try to get each age window to those specific links. We'll actually go in, advance ourselves to the link, copy that link, and just send it to that group of 14-year-olds. So they're just clicking once. They're not trying to navigate through the whole website. So if you have the ability through your registrar to kind of separate them that way and filter it yourself, that's one way.
In the spring, some districts will have a limited tryout, so they'll be invitation only because their numbers are big, and in some districts it's an open tryout. District 4 is an example for the boys. They really don't have a AA team down there, so their tryout is open to anybody and everybody. And honestly, since we redistricted, and that is the case for District 4, they have generally given about 10 players the okay to play in the spring festival, and then they take the other 10 from 2, 3, 6, 10, 8. And we try to fill in. We'll ask for one defenseman, one forward, and oddly enough, some of those, and this is to me, someone says, this is really negative. I said, no, it is, it's positive. You send your 21st player down there, so he's your 13th forward, he makes the camp, and your 12th forward doesn't on the other team. So the difference between the 11th skater and the 13th skater, there's not a lot.
Can change every day.
Yeah, and so it's just like that B1 could be on the A team at the end of the year, and you could change 2 players and wouldn't even notice the difference. So, you know, that happens. So I look at that as a positive, and I look at it also gives another player an opportunity who didn't make it through the session. So what happens in the spring, we start out with full participation. Then they bring it down to their 30 top players, and they run all their skill sessions with the top 30. And then at the end of a certain period of time, then they go to 20. And so those 10 players are more than happy to do the skill sessions, but they don't move on. But sometimes they'll get called into a neighboring district, gives them an opportunity to play And many times they're pretty skilled players that wouldn't make it in a large district, but they're okay somewhere else. So we feel like we've worked the system really well. When your son was in, did they go right to 20 right away, or was it 30?
So we're District 5, so are you talking Tier 1? Or are you
No, I'm talking the
Tier
spring.
3?
Yeah.
For the spring? I think they started with about 60 kids that tried out, and they went to 30, then they went
Oh, they did,
to
okay, so they're in the new program.
Boom.
That's kind of new for us, and we just figured it's just another way that we can affect 10 more players. As far as the going forward on the Tier 1, I think at this point in time, we'd invite all those players to come back and go through it again. And that was another reason for creating Tier 2 also in the Prospects League, is that we were getting the comment, well, I don't want to get cut again. Well, you know, I try to explain to them that's, you know, you shouldn't worry about that. It's the experience of getting through it and doing it, and maybe it will change. I mean, I get players that say, I think I should go down to the USHL before I go to high school. Well, depending on their age, if they're 15, I go, if you want to go down and fund their tryout, go ahead. But probably don't need to, but some point in time, you probably should just do that one time just to see what that level is like, because you may end up there anyway. It's a great experience. It's a great, as Sean talked earlier, you're either chasing or leading. That might be a chasing moment, but it gives you an idea and gives you a comparison. How do you rate against top players? Just like when we get up to the summer camp, we've got players up there that for the first time ever are not going to make a team. And you know, we only can take 24. It gets pretty tight at that point in time. So, any other questions or concerns or anything? Okay. I appreciate you being here. I think a lot of people went out to the sunshine. But good questions, and thanks very much. Appreciate all you do.